I arrived at my dad's house and found him in the dark, with no food. I asked, "Dad, where's the $20,000 I send you every month?" Suddenly, my stepmother appeared and smugly declared, "I control every dollar he receives. It's my money now." I took out my phone and did something that left her speechless. But let me back up. I need to explain how I got here. Standing in my father's living room, watching this woman I barely knew strip away everything I'd worked so hard to provide for him. My name is Claire, and I'm 42 years old. I live about 3 hours away from my father, Richard, who's 78. After my mother died 6 years ago, Dad was lost. Completely, utterly lost. He wandered around their house like a ghost, touching her things, sitting in her chair, unable to move forward. I visited every weekend for a year, cooking meals he wouldn't eat, suggesting grief counseling he wouldn't attend, watching him fade a little more each time. Then he met Patricia. She worked at the grocery store where he'd started shopping. A different one than the store he and Mom had gone to for 30 years. He said it was too painful to go to the old place. Patricia was in her early 60s, divorced, with silver hair she wore in a sleek bob and a quick smile. When Dad introduced us, she seemed nice enough. A little polished, maybe, compared to my mother's comfortable warmth, but nice. They dated for 8 months before Dad told me they were getting married. Not asked what I thought, just told me. I swallowed my surprise and said I wanted him to be happy. And I meant it. I truly did. I couldn't expect him to be alone forever. And Patricia seemed to make him laugh again. That was worth something. The wedding was small. Patricia had a daughter who didn't attend, something about living overseas. Dad said, though Patricia's expression went tight when he mentioned it. I stood as Dad's witness and tried to feel hopeful. After the wedding, I made a decision. I wanted to respect their new marriage, give them space to build their life together. I'd learned from friends that adult children hovering could poison a new relationship, so I pulled back. I called Dad every week, but I didn't visit as often. Once a month, maybe every 6 weeks. I told myself I was being considerate, but I wanted to help. I wanted Dad to know I was still there for him, so I started sending money. Dad's pension covered his basics, but I knew Patricia had come into the marriage with some debt from her divorce. I figured if I sent money, they could travel, enjoy themselves, not worry. $20,000 a month? It was a lot, but I'd done well for myself in software development, and Dad had sacrificed so much to put me through college. This felt like a way to pay him back and stay connected without interfering. Dad protested at first, but I insisted. I set up a direct deposit into his checking account, every month like clockwork. I imagined him and Patricia going to nice dinners, maybe taking a cruise, fixing up the house. It made me feel better about not being there in person. The calls continued weekly, though I noticed Dad seemed more subdued as time went on. When I asked if everything was okay, he'd say he was fine, just tired. Patricia rarely got on the phone. A few times I heard her voice in the background, sharp and impatient, but Dad would say she was busy with something. I told myself it was normal. Marriage adjustments, privacy, not my business. Then, last month, I called and Dad didn't answer. I tried his cell, nothing. I tried the landline again, nothing. I called the next day, and the next. A week went by. I left voicemails, I texted, silence. Fear crept in, cold and insistent. I called the local hospital. No one by his name had been admitted. I thought about calling the police for a wellness check, but something stopped me. Pride, maybe. Or fear of overreacting and embarrassing Dad. Finally, 2 weeks after my last conversation with him, I decided to just drive over, unannounced. It was a Saturday afternoon, bright and warm. The 3-hour drive felt like 10. I kept imagining terrible things. Dad sick, Dad injured, Dad dead. Alone in that house while I'd been respecting his space. I pulled into the driveway just after 2 p.m. The house looked the same from the outside, neat lawn, flower beds my mother had planted that Patricia had kept up. But something felt wrong. The curtains were all drawn. In the middle of the afternoon, I knocked. No answer. I rang the doorbell. Nothing. I tried the door. Locked. My heart was hammering now. I walked around to the back door, the one that led into the kitchen. Also locked. But I knew where Dad kept the spare key, under a fake rock near the garden shed. Mom had put it there 20 years ago. My hand shook as I unlocked the back door. The smell hit me first. Stale air, unwashed dishes, something rotting. The kitchen was dim, curtains drawn here too. Dirty plates were piled in the sink. The trash was overflowing. This wasn't Dad. Dad had always been meticulous, especially after Mom died. Keeping the house clean was his way of honoring her. Dad! My voice came out thin and scared. I moved through the kitchen into the dining room. The table was covered with mail, unopened envelopes, magazines, into the living room. And there he was, sitting in his recliner in the dark. The curtains were drawn tight, just a sliver of sunlight cutting through. He was so still, I thought for one horrible moment that he was dead. Then his head turned slightly toward me. Claire? His voice was hoarse, confused. I fumbled for the light switch and flipped it on. The sight of him broke something inside me. He'd lost weight, so much weight. His clothes hung off him. His face was gaunt, stubbled with patchy gray beard. His eyes were sunken and dull. Oh my God, Dad, what? I crossed the room and knelt beside his chair. He smelled unwashed. There was a glass of water on it, the side table, empty except for a dried ring at the bottom. Dad, what's going on? Are you sick? Have you eaten? He blinked at me slowly, like he was trying to remember how to speak. I didn't know you were coming. I called for 2 weeks. You didn't answer. The phone, he gestured vaguely toward the hallway. Patricia handles the phone. Where is Patricia? She's out a lot. I looked around the room. A blanket was tangled at his feet. A plate sat on the floor beside the chair with what looked like dried toast crusts from days ago. Dad, when was the last time you ate? Yesterday? Patricia brought me toast. Toast. My father, wasting away in the dark on toast. Anger started to burn through the fear. Dad, I send you $20,000 a month. Where is that money going? You should have groceries. You should have help if you need it. Where I control every dollar he receives. The voice came from behind me, cold and sharp. I spun around. Patricia stood in the doorway to the hall, arms crossed. She was perfectly put together, hair styled, makeup on, wearing expensive-looking athleisure. She looked like she'd just come from the gym. Her eyes were hard. Excuse me? I stood up, putting myself between her and my father. The money you send. It goes into our joint account. Our money. I manage our finances. She said it like she was explaining something to a child. Richard signed everything over to me. It's my money now. The smugness in her voice made my blood run cold. What are you talking about? That money is for my father. For both of you. For food, for... I gestured at the dark room, the plate on the floor, my father's skeletal frame. What the hell is this? This is none of your business. Patricia took a step into the room. This is our home, our marriage. You can't just barge in here. I have a key, and I'm here because my father didn't answer his phone for 2 weeks. My voice was shaking now, fury and fear mixing together. He's sitting in the dark. He's starving. Where is the money, Patricia? She smiled. Actually smiled. I told you, I manage our finances. Richard doesn't need to worry about it. He's comfortable. Comfortable? I wanted to scream. Look at him. He's fine. He's just old. Old people don't need much. She waved her hand dismissively. And frankly, Claire, you've been sending that money as a gift. A gift. You don't get to dictate how we spend it. A gift for my father's care. A gift is a gift. Legally, it's ours. And I've been very responsible with it. Investments, savings, planning for our future. Our future, not Dad's future. Our future. I looked at my father. He was staring at his hands, folded in his lap. Not looking at me, not looking at Patricia. Just gone. Checked out. Dad? I knelt again, trying to catch his eye. Dad, is this true? Did you agree to this? He didn't answer for a long moment. Then, so quietly, I almost didn't hear it. I signed the papers she asked me to sign. My heart dropped. What papers? Patricia cut in. Marital property agreements, power of attorney for finances, perfectly legal. Richard trusts me to handle these things. He's not good with money, never has been. That was a lie. Dad had managed his and Mom's finances perfectly well for 50 years. I wanted to grab my father and shake him. I wanted to drag him out of this house right now. But something in his face stopped me. He looked defeated, ashamed, afraid. I stood and pulled out my phone. Patricia's expression shifted just slightly. What are you doing? I'm calling someone. My thumb hovered over the screen. I didn't know who yet. Police? A lawyer? Adult Protective Services? You can't. Patricia's voice went sharp. This is our home. You're trespassing. I have a key, which you used without permission. I'm asking you to leave, now, or I'll call the police myself and have you removed for trespassing and harassment. We stared at each other. She was completely calm, completely certain, and I realized she'd done this before. Maybe not exactly this, but something like it. She knew exactly what to say, how to position herself legally. She'd planned this. I looked at my phone, then at my father, then back at Patricia. And I did something I don't think she expected. I laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh, it was a cold, bitter sound that surprised even me. Patricia's eyes narrowed. What's funny? You are. I held up my phone. You think I'm calling the police on you? No, I'm calling my bank right now. And I'm stopping every single deposit I've been sending to that joint account. Every penny. Her face went white. You can't. I absolutely can. It's my money. My account. I can stop it anytime I want. I was already pulling up my banking app. And then I'm going to make some other calls. To Adult Protective Services. To a lawyer. To Dad's doctor. Because this... I gestured at the dark room, at my father's condition. This is elder abuse. And you're not going to get away with it. You have no proof of anything. But her voice wasn't quite as steady now. I have eyes. I have a phone with a camera. I have 2 weeks of unreturned calls. I raised the phone, took a photo of the room. Patricia moved toward me, but I stepped back, taking another photo of my father in his chair, of the plate on the floor, of the drawn curtains. And I'm going to document everything. Richard? Patricia turned to him, her voice suddenly pleading. Richard, tell her. Tell her we're fine. Tell her to leave us alone. My father slowly lifted his head. He looked at Patricia, then at me. His eyes were watery, exhausted. Dad? I said softly. Tell me the truth. Are you fine? The silence stretched out. Patricia was staring at him, her expression tight. I held my breath. Finally, Dad spoke. His voice was barely a whisper. I'm so tired. Not, I'm fine. Not, leave us alone. Just, I'm so tired. And I knew, whatever hold Patricia had on him, whatever she'd done to get him to this point, he wasn't fighting anymore. He'd given up. Patricia's face twisted. Get out of this house right now, or I swear to God I will call the police and have you arrested. I looked at my father one more time. I'll be back, Dad. I promise. I'm going to fix this. Then I walked out of that house, got in my car, and sat in the driveway with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I had no idea if I could fix this. I didn't know what Patricia had gotten him to sign, what legal rights she had, whether I could even get him away from her. But I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to let her destroy my father, not while I was still breathing. I stopped the monthly deposits that same day, sitting in my car in a grocery store parking lot halfway home. My hands were still shaking as I navigated through the banking app, but I forced myself to be methodical. $20,000 a month stopped, effective immediately. Then I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen, wondering if I just made everything worse. What if Patricia took it out on Dad? What if she punished him for my interference? The image of him sitting in that dark room, so thin and defeated, was burned into my mind. I could still smell the stale air of that house, still see the empty glass beside his chair. I called him. Of course, no one answered. I tried 5 more times over the next hour as I drove home. Nothing. Not even voicemail picking up anymore. She'd probably turned the phone off entirely. When I got back to my apartment, I couldn't sleep. I sat on my couch with my laptop and started researching. Elder abuse, financial exploitation, power of attorney. The things I read made me feel sick. Apparently, financial abuse of elderly people was incredibly common, especially when a new spouse or caregiver isolated the victim. The signs were all there. I just hadn't been looking. The reduced contact, Dad's increasing quietness on our calls, Patricia's control over the phone, the fact that I'd never actually been invited back to visit after the wedding. I'd thought I was being respectful, giving them space. I'd been making it easy for her. I found a hotline for elder abuse and called it Sunday morning. The woman who answered was kind and patient as I explained the situation. She asked careful questions. Had I witnessed physical abuse? No. Neglect? Yes. The condition of the house, Dad's weight loss, lack of food. Financial exploitation? Almost certainly, though I didn't have concrete proof of where the money had gone. She gave me the number for Adult Protective Services in Dad's county and suggested I file a report. She also gently told me that if Dad had legally granted Patricia power of attorney, removing that authority could be complicated, especially if he'd done so while competent. The system is designed to respect elderly people's autonomy, she explained, even when they make choices we might not agree with. He didn't choose to sit in the dark and starve, I said, my voice breaking. I understand. And that's why you need to file the report. Let the professionals investigate. I called APS as soon as their office opened Monday morning. I filed a report giving them every detail I could remember. The woman taking the report was professional but non-committal. She said someone would conduct a welfare check within 48 hours and that I'd be contacted if they needed more information. Then I called a lawyer. 3 lawyers, actually, before I found one who specialized in elder law and could see me that week. The whole time, I kept trying to call Dad. The phone rang and rang, or went straight to voicemail, which was now full. I tried texting. I tried the landline, his cell, even tried calling at different times of day, thinking maybe I'd catch a moment when Patricia was out. Nothing. On Tuesday, I drove back to Dad's house. I told myself I'd just check on him from outside, make sure he was okay, not push my way in again. But when I got there, a car I didn't recognize was parked in the driveway, a sleek black sedan. The curtains were still drawn. I sat in my car across the street watching. After about 20 minutes, a man came out of the house with Patricia. He was carrying a briefcase, wearing a suit. They stood on the front porch talking. Patricia smiled and shook his hand. He got in the sedan and drove away. I waited until he turned the corner, then got out and approached the house. Before I could even knock, Patricia opened the door. She must have seen me from the window. I told you not to come back. She didn't open the screen door, just stood there blocking the entrance. I want to see my father. Richard doesn't want to see you. You upset him terribly with your accusations and your dramatics. Let me hear that from him. No, you need to leave. Who was that man? Her expression went cold. That's none of your business. Was he a lawyer? Did you have my father sign more papers? Get off my property, Claire, or I'm calling the police. Adult Protective Services is coming to check on him, I said. They're going to see what you're doing. Something flickered across her face. Annoyance, maybe, but not fear. Good. They can see that Richard is perfectly well cared for by his loving wife, and that his daughter is harassing us. He was sitting in the dark, starving. He was resting. He's an old man. He rests a lot. She started to close the door. I stopped the money, I said quickly. The deposits. They're done. She paused, looked at me through the screen. I know. You're petty and vindictive. But it doesn't matter. Richard has his pension. We're perfectly fine. She shut the door. I heard the deadbolt click. I stood there on the porch, helpless. I couldn't break in again. I'd meant what I said about not wanting to get arrested. I needed to fight this the right way, with the law on my side. But God, it was hard to walk away. I went to my car and parked down the street where I could see the house. I felt like a stalker, but I didn't know what else to do. I needed to know Dad was alive, at least, moving around. I sat there for 3 hours. I saw nothing. No movement in the windows. No one coming or going. The house just sat there, silent and dark, like it was holding its breath. Finally, I forced myself to leave. I had the meeting with the lawyer the next day. I needed to sleep, to be coherent, to figure out my next steps. The lawyer's name was Margaret Chen, and her office was in a small professional building near my apartment. She was in her 50s, with short gray hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She listened to everything without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she sat back and folded her hands. "This is a difficult situation," she said, "but not hopeless. First, the good news. You did the right thing filing an APS report. If they find evidence of neglect or abuse, they can intervene regardless of any power of attorney arrangements. And the bad news? The bad news is that if your father granted her power of attorney while he was mentally competent, and if he confirms that he wants her to manage his finances, there may not be much you can do legally to override that, even if it's a terrible decision." My stomach sank. So she just gets away with it? Not necessarily. There are a few avenues we can explore. First, we can petition the court to review the POA arrangement if we can show that it was obtained through undue influence or coercion. Second, if your father is found to be incapacitated now through medical evaluation, you could petition to become his guardian or conservator. He's not incapacitated, he's just beaten down. Depression, malnutrition, isolation, these things can affect cognitive function. A medical evaluation might reveal more than you think. She leaned forward. But Claire, I need to be honest with you. These cases can be long, expensive, and emotionally devastating. And they require your father's cooperation, at least to some extent. If he's unwilling to testify against Patricia, or if he actively defends her choices, it becomes much harder. So what do I do? You wait for the APS investigation. You document everything you can, every attempt to contact him, every visit, photos, witnesses who've seen his condition. And you talk to your father if you can get access to him. Try to understand what hold she has over him. Is it fear? Emotional manipulation? Something else? I thought about the way Dad had looked at Patricia in that living room. The way he'd shrunk into himself. The whispered words, "I'm so tired." "I think he's afraid," I said quietly. "Afraid of being alone. Afraid she'll leave him." Margaret nodded slowly. That's a common tactic with this kind of exploitation. The abuser convinces the victim that they're the only one who cares, the only one who'll stay. Everyone else is the enemy. She paused. Your father lost his wife. He's vulnerable. Patricia likely saw that vulnerability and used it. Hearing it laid out so clinically made it worse somehow. My father, reduced to a mark, a target. How long will the APS investigation take? It varies. Could be a few days, could be a few weeks. They're understaffed and overworked, but they take these reports seriously. I left her office feeling marginally better. At least I had a plan, or the outline of one, but also more frightened. This could take weeks, months. And in the meantime, Dad was still in that house. That night, I tried calling again. And again the next morning. And the morning after that. On Friday, 4 days after I'd filed the APS report, I got a call from an unknown number. "Ms. Porter? This is Linda Vasquez from Adult Protective Services. I'm calling about the report you filed concerning Richard Porter." My heart leapt. "Yes. Did you see him? Is he okay?" "I conducted a home visit yesterday. I was able to speak with both Mr. Porter and his wife, Patricia." "And?" There was a pause. "Mr. Porter appears to be appropriately cared for. The home was clean. He was dressed and groomed. He reported no abuse or neglect." I felt like I'd been punched. That's impossible. When I was there 5 days ago, he was sitting in a dark room. He'd lost a severe amount of weight. There was no food. I understand your concern, Ms. Porter, but at the time of my visit, the conditions you described were not present. Mr. Porter stated that he'd been recovering from a stomach virus, which explained the weight loss and his previous lethargy. Mrs. Porter provided medical records from a recent doctor's visit confirming the illness. A stomach virus. My voice sounded hollow. Yes. Mr. Porter was lucid, coherent, and adamant that he's being well cared for. He also stated that he's upset by what he called your interference and asked that you respect his privacy. She'd coached him, or threatened him, or both, and she'd cleaned everything up, taken him to a doctor, manufactured a cover story. Did you ask him about the money, about the power of attorney? I did. He confirmed that he voluntarily gave his wife power of attorney for financial matters, and that he's satisfied with her management of their finances. He was starving. Ms. Porter. Linda's voice was kind but firm. I know this is hard, but your father is an adult with the right to make his own choices, even if we don't agree with them. Unless I see clear evidence of abuse or exploitation, I can't intervene in how he chooses to live or who he trusts. So that's it? You're closing the case? I'm keeping it open for now. I'll do a follow-up visit in 2 weeks. But based on what I observed, there's no immediate danger requiring intervention. After she hung up, I sat on my couch and cried. Big, ugly, furious tears. Patricia had outmaneuvered me. She'd known exactly what to do: clean up the evidence, create an alibi, get Dad to back her story. And it had worked. I felt so stupid, so powerless. But I wasn't done. I couldn't be. I called Margaret and told her what happened. She sighed. I was afraid of that. These abusers are often very good at covering their tracks, especially when they know they're being watched. So what now? Now you be patient and persistent. Visit when you can. Try to get time alone with your father. Rebuild trust. Let him know you're not trying to control him. You're trying to help. She won't let me near him. She can't legally prevent you from visiting if your father wants to see you. The question is whether he'll say he wants to see you. I spent the weekend in a fog of anger and helplessness. I drafted and deleted a dozen texts to Dad's phone, knowing Patricia probably monitored it. I thought about showing up at the house again, but couldn't face another confrontation with Patricia's smug certainty. On Monday morning, I made a decision. If Patricia was going to play games, I'd play them too. But smarter. I started with Dad's neighbors. I drove back to his street and knocked on doors. Most people weren't home or didn't answer. But at the fourth house, a small blue ranch across the street and 2 houses down, an elderly woman opened the door. Can I help you? I'm Claire Porter, Richard Porter's daughter. He lives in the house with the white shutters. Her expression shifted, something uncertain crossing her face. Oh, yes. I'm worried about my dad. I was wondering if you'd noticed anything unusual lately. Anything that concerned you? She hesitated, glancing past me toward Dad's house. I don't like to gossip. It's not gossip. I'm genuinely worried he's not being cared for properly. Another pause. Then she opened the door wider. Come in. I'll make tea. Her name was Dorothy Alvarez, and she'd lived on the street for 30 years. She'd known my parents slightly, waved to them, chatted occasionally about gardening. Your mother was lovely, Dorothy said, pouring hot water into flowered cups. I was so sorry when she passed. Thank you. And your father seemed so lost after. I tried to bring him meals a few times, but he was very private about his grief. He was. Dorothy sat down across from me at her small kitchen table. Then he met Patricia. The way she said the name told me everything. You don't like her. I don't know her well enough to like or dislike her, but I've noticed things. What things? She wrapped her hands around her teacup. Patricia leaves. A lot. 2, 3 days at a time sometimes. The car is gone. The house is dark. My heart started beating faster. And my father? I don't see him. I used to see your father outside sometimes, tending the garden, checking the mail. Not anymore. Not for months. She looked at me. I mind my own business usually, but a few weeks ago, I saw you pull up. I saw you go inside, and then you left looking very upset. I found my father sitting in the dark. The house was filthy. He looked like he hadn't eaten in days. Dorothy nodded slowly, like this confirmed something she'd suspected. Last week, there was an ambulance. I know, he collapsed. Malnutrition. He came home from the hospital the next day, and then a woman came to visit, official looking, with a clipboard. And after she left, Patricia was outside cleaning, trimming the bushes, making everything look nice. Dorothy met my eyes. It felt like a performance. It was. Adult Protective Services came to check on him, and she made sure everything looked perfect. So they didn't help? They said he's fine, that he wants her there. Dorothy was quiet for a moment. Then, I don't think your father wants anything anymore. I think he's given up. Hearing someone else say it made it real in a way that shattered something inside me. Will you help me? I asked. Will you document what you see? The days she's gone, the days the house is dark. Be a witness if I need one? Dorothy looked frightened. I don't want trouble. I'm not trying to make trouble. I'm trying to save my father's life. She stared into her teacup. I waited, not pushing. Finally, she said, I'll keep a record. Times, dates, what I observe. But I can't promise anything beyond that. It was something. It wasn't much, but it was something. I thanked her and left my number. As I walked back to my car, I glanced at Dad's house. The curtains were drawn, as always, but I thought I saw one of them twitch just slightly. Someone was watching. 3 days later, I got the call I'd been dreading and hoping for in equal measure. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was at work, staring blankly at code on my screen, accomplishing nothing. My phone buzzed. Unknown number again. Is this Claire Porter? Yes. This is Regional Hospital calling. Your father, Richard Porter, was brought in by ambulance about an hour ago. You're listed as his emergency contact. The world tilted. What happened? He collapsed at home. We're still running tests, but you should come as soon as you can. I grabbed my keys and ran. The hospital was 40 minutes away. I made it in 30, driving too fast, my hands locked on the wheel. I kept thinking, not again, not another hospital, not like Mom. When I got to the emergency department, I gave Dad's name at the desk. The nurse checked her computer. He's in base 7. Through those doors, take a left. I found him behind a blue curtain, lying in a hospital bed with an IV in his arm. He looked even thinner than before, if that was possible. His skin had a grayish tint. His eyes were closed. Dad? His eyes opened slowly. When he saw me, something flickered in his expression. Relief? Fear? I couldn't tell. Claire. I pulled a chair close to the bed and took his hand. It felt like paper, dry and fragile. What happened? Are you okay? I'm fine. Just dizzy. I stood up and fell. You're not fine, Dad. You're here because you collapsed. Again. He looked away. It's nothing. A doctor came in before I could respond. A young woman with tired eyes and a tablet in her hand. Ms. Porter? I'm Dr. Ramos. I've been examining your father. What's wrong with him? She glanced at Dad, then back at me. Can I speak with you outside? We stepped into the hallway. Dr. Ramos pulled up charts on her tablet. Your father is severely malnourished. His blood work shows vitamin deficiencies, dehydration, and dangerously low blood sugar. His weight is about 30 pounds below what it should be for his height and age. She looked at me. How long has he been like this? I don't know. I saw him about 2 weeks ago and he looked bad, but I don't live nearby. I didn't realize how bad until I visited. Does he live alone? No, he lives with his wife. Dr. Ramos' expression shifted, became more careful. I see. And is she here? I don't know. I just got here. We called the number on file. Someone is coming. She paused. Ms. Porter, I have to ask, do you have concerns about your father's home environment? Yes. I filed a report with Adult Protective Services. They investigated and said everything was fine, but it's not fine. Look at him. She nodded slowly. We're admitting him. He needs IV nutrition and monitoring. That will give us time to do a full assessment, including cognitive function. If we determine he's unsafe to return home, we can intervene. Thank you. The relief was overwhelming. Thank you so much. I went back into the room. Dad was still staring at the ceiling. They're keeping you here for a bit, I said gently, to get your strength back. I want to go home. You can't right now, Dad. You're too weak. Patricia will worry. The way he said it, automatic, almost rehearsed, made my skin crawl. Dad, can I ask you something? He didn't respond, but he didn't say no. When I visited 2 weeks ago, you were sitting in the dark. There was no food in the house. You told me you were tired. Do you remember that? I was sick. Were you? Or were you being neglected? His jaw tightened. Don't. Don't what? Don't do this. Don't make me choose. Choose between what? He closed his eyes. Between you and her. My heart broke a little more. Dad, you shouldn't have to choose. You should have both of us. A wife who takes care of you and a daughter who loves you. She does take care of me. Does she? Because it doesn't look like it. You don't understand. His voice was rising, agitated. You don't know what it's like. After your mother died, I was alone. Completely alone. And Patricia was there. She made me feel like I mattered again. Like I wasn't just waiting to die. You matter to me. You have your own life, your work, your apartment, your friends. You don't need me. That's not true. Patricia needs me. She chose me. She stays with me. He opened his eyes, and they were wet. If I make her angry, if I accuse her or side with you against her, she'll leave. And I'll be alone again. I can't do that again, Claire. There it was. The truth. The hold Patricia had over him. She'd taken a grieving, lonely man and convinced him that she was his only option, that he was lucky she stayed. And now he was so afraid of losing her that he'd accept anything, neglect, theft, isolation, just to avoid being alone. I wanted to tell him that it was a lie, that he wasn't alone, that I was here, that I'd always be here. But before I could speak, the curtain yanked open. Patricia stood there, purse over her shoulder, eyes blazing. What did you do? She was looking at me, her voice low and furious. Did you call the ambulance? Did you bring him here to turn him against me? I didn't call anyone. The hospital called me. You've been harassing us, stalking our house, filing false reports. False reports? I stood up. He collapsed because he's starving. Look at him. He has a medical condition. Yes, malnutrition, because you're not feeding him. How dare you? Patricia stepped closer, and I could see the calculation behind her anger. She was performing, making sure Dad saw her as the victim. I have done nothing but care for Richard since the day we married. And you've done nothing but try to undermine our relationship because you can't stand that he chose someone other than your precious dead mother. The cruelty of it took my breath away. Don't you dare... Richard. Patricia turned to Dad, her voice shifting to something softer, wounded. Tell her. Tell her I take care of you. Tell her you want her to leave us alone. Dad looked between us, his expression agonized. His voice was so small. I just want peace. Then tell her to go, Patricia pressed. Dad, please. I moved to the other side of the bed. Please, just tell the truth. Tell the doctor what's really happening. You don't have to be afraid. I'm not afraid, he whispered, but his hands were shaking. Dr. Ramos appeared in the doorway. I need everyone to calm down. Mr. Porter needs rest. Patricia immediately smoothed her expression. Of course. I'm sorry, doctor. This is just very stressful. My stepdaughter has been making wild accusations, and it's upsetting for Richard. I'm going to have to ask both of you to leave, Dr. Ramos said firmly. Mr. Porter needs quiet. I'm his wife. I'm staying. Patricia sat down in the chair I'd vacated, taking Dad's hand possessively. Dr. Ramos looked at me. Ms. Porter, can I speak with you in the hall again? I glanced at Dad, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. I followed the doctor out. I'm calling APS again, Dr. Ramos said quietly. Based on his physical condition and what I just witnessed, I have concerns. They already investigated. 2 weeks ago. She cleaned everything up and convinced my father to say everything was fine. Well, she can't clean this up. The medical evidence is clear, and I'm documenting everything, including her behavior just now. She paused. I'm also going to request a psychological evaluation for your father. If he's being coerced or manipulated, we need to know. She'll fight it. She can try, but I'm the attending physician, and I get to decide what's medically necessary for my patient. Dr. Ramos met my eyes. I believe you, Ms. Porter, and I'm going to help however I can. I could have hugged her. Instead, I just said, thank you. I left the hospital before Patricia could come back out and start another scene. But I sat in my car in the parking lot for a long time, watching the entrance. About an hour later, Patricia emerged. She walked to her car, a nice BMW I was pretty sure hadn't been in Dad's driveway before, and drove away. I waited another 10 minutes, then went back inside. Dad was alone now, the curtain half open. He looked exhausted. She's gone, I said softly. He nodded. I sat down again. For a few minutes, we didn't speak. Then Dad said, she told me you abandoned me. I froze. What? After the wedding, when you stopped visiting as much, Patricia said it was because you didn't approve of her, that you were punishing me for moving on from your mother. His voice was flat, reciting. She said the money you sent was guilt money, that you didn't actually care. Dad, that's not true. I pulled back because I thought you needed space. I thought I was being respectful. I know. He cut me off. I know that now. But at the time, I was so lonely. And she was there, every day, saying these things, and I started to believe them. It was easier to believe them than to think I'd made a mistake marrying her. You're not the one who made a mistake. She manipulated you. I let her. His eyes finally met mine. I was so afraid of being alone that I let her do whatever she wanted. The power of attorney, the bank accounts, all of it. She said it would make things easier, that she'd take care of everything so I could just rest. And then she took everything. Not everything. Not at first. It was gradual. She started spending more time away, stopped cooking as much, stopped seeing me. I became invisible in my own home. He swallowed hard. And I told myself it was fine, that this was what marriage was sometimes, that I should be grateful she stayed. Dad, you don't have to be grateful to someone for neglecting you. I know that. In my head, I know that. But Claire, I'm 78 years old. I'm tired. I'm so tired. And the thought of fighting, of starting over, of being alone, his voice broke. It's terrifying. I took his hand again. You're not alone. You have me. You've always had me. A tear slid down his cheek. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't answer your calls. I'm sorry I let it get this bad. I didn't know how to get out. It's okay. We're going to figure it out. Together. He squeezed my hand weakly. She's going to be so angry. Let her be angry. You're safe here, and I'm going to make sure you stay safe. He nodded, but I could see the fear still in his eyes. Patricia had spent months convincing him that he had no choices, no power, no worth without her. Undoing that damage was going to take more than one conversation, but at least, finally, he was starting to talk. That night, I slept in my car in the hospital parking lot. I told myself it was because I didn't want to waste time driving home, but really, I just couldn't stand the thought of Patricia coming back and getting to Dad when I wasn't there. And the next morning, Dr. Ramos found me in the cafeteria. Good news, she said. The psychologist is coming this afternoon to evaluate your father. And I got a call from APS. They're sending someone today as well. Patricia's going to lose her mind. Your father is my patient. His well-being is my only concern. She paused. Also, security has instructions not to allow Patricia into his room without staff present. After yesterday's confrontation, I documented that her presence causes him distress. I could have cried with relief. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We still have a long way to go. She was right. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like maybe, just maybe, we had a chance. And then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You're going to regret this. He's my husband. You have no rights. I'll make sure you never see him again. Patricia. I showed the text to Dr. Ramos. She read it and her expression hardened. Forward that to APS and to your lawyer. That's harassment and a threat. Will it actually help? Every piece of evidence helps. We're building a case, Miss Porter, one brick at a time. I looked toward the elevators, toward the floor where Dad was resting. Patricia thought she'd won. She thought Dad was too broken and I was too far away, and the system was too slow to stop her. But she'd made one critical mistake. She'd underestimated how far I'd go to save my father. And I was just getting started. Dad stayed in the hospital for 5 days. 5 days during which Patricia didn't visit once. She called the nurse's station repeatedly, demanding to speak to him, insisting she had rights as his wife. Each time, the staff politely told her that Mr. Porter was resting and couldn't take calls. After the 3rd day, she stopped calling. I stayed. I took time off work, slept in my car or in the waiting room, and spent every possible moment with Dad. We didn't talk about Patricia much at first. Mostly, I just sat with him, brought him books, watched game shows on the small TV mounted on the wall. Let him see that I wasn't going anywhere. The psychologist who evaluated him was a calm, gray-haired man named Dr. Morris. He spoke with Dad privately for over an hour, then asked to meet with me. Your father shows signs of depression and anxiety, Dr. Morris told me, but he's cognitively intact. He understands his situation. He's just been worn down emotionally. By Patricia. He didn't use those words, but yes. The picture he painted was one of psychological manipulation and isolation. Classic coercive control. Dr. Morris folded his hands. The good news is that he's starting to recognize it. He's starting to understand that what's been happening isn't normal or acceptable. Will he testify to that if it comes to a legal fight? That's hard to say. Right now, he's frightened and exhausted. Pushing him to make big decisions too quickly could backfire. He paused. But with support and time, I think he can regain his sense of agency. He just needs to believe he has options besides Patricia or loneliness. The APS caseworker, a different one this time, came on day 3. Her name was Janet, and she was older than the first caseworker, with sharp eyes that didn't miss anything. She interviewed Dad, read the medical reports, spoke with Dr. Ramos and Dr. Morris. When she called me into the hall afterward, her expression was grim. This is one of the worst cases of financial exploitation and neglect I've seen in a while, she said bluntly. Your father has been systematically isolated and drained. The medical evidence alone is damning. So what happens now? I'm recommending an emergency conservatorship hearing. Given his physical and mental state, I believe he needs a court-appointed advocate to protect his interests while he recovers. Would I be able to be that conservator? Possibly. You're next of kin, and you've clearly been trying to help. But the court will want to ensure you're acting in his best interests, not just trying to override his choices. She looked at me carefully. Are you prepared for this to get ugly? Because Patricia will fight it, and it could take months. I don't care how long it takes. I'm not letting her have him back. Janet nodded. Then get a good lawyer. You're going to need one. I called Margaret immediately. When I explained what APS was recommending, she let out a low whistle. An emergency conservatorship is serious. It means the court is acknowledging that your father can't protect himself right now. That's good for your case. Patricia's going to claim I'm manipulating him. Of course she will. But you have medical professionals backing you up. That carries weight. Margaret paused. There's something else we can do. We can petition to freeze the joint accounts pending investigation. If Patricia has been stealing from him, we need to stop the bleeding now. Can we do that? We can try. I'll file the petition today. Things started moving fast after that. Margaret filed for emergency financial protections and for temporary guardianship, arguing that Dad was vulnerable and at risk. The court scheduled a hearing for the following week. And then Patricia made her move. On day 4 of Dad's hospital stay, she showed up with her own lawyer. I was in Dad's room when they arrived. A nurse tried to stop them, But Patricia's lawyer, a tall man in an expensive suit, insisted they had a legal right to see Richard Porter. Dr. Ramos was called. Security was called. It became a whole scene in the hallway outside Dad's room. I stayed inside with Dad, holding his hand. He looked terrified. "It's okay," I told him. "You don't have to see her if you don't want to. She's going to be so angry. Let her be angry. She can't hurt you here." Finally, Dr. Ramos came back in. "Mr. Porter, your wife and her attorney are requesting to see you. You have the right to refuse." Dad looked at me, then at Dr. Ramos, then down at his hands. "I'll see her," he said quietly, "but I want Claire to stay." Dr. Ramos nodded. "I'll allow a brief visit, but if it becomes upsetting, I'm ending it." Patricia came in, followed by her lawyer. She looked perfect, as always. Hair done, makeup flawless, wearing a soft pink cardigan that made her look gentle and concerned. The mask was back on. "Richard." Her voice was tender, wounded. "Oh, sweetheart, I've been so worried. They wouldn't let me see you." Dad didn't respond. Patricia sat down on the edge of the bed, reaching for his hand. He didn't pull away, but he didn't hold hers either. "The doctors say you're doing better. That's wonderful. I can't wait to bring you home." She glanced at me, her expression cooling. "We have so much to talk about, so many lies to clear up." "Mrs. Porter," Dr. Ramos said firmly, "this is a medical visit, not a family mediation." Patricia's lawyer stepped forward. "Dr. Ramos, my client has every legal right to visit her husband and discuss his care. She is his wife and holds power of attorney for his health decisions." "Actually," Margaret's voice came from the doorway, "that's in dispute." I turned. Margaret stood there in a sharp blazer, holding a file folder. She must have come straight from court. "And you are?" Patricia's lawyer asked coldly. "Margaret Chen, attorney for Claire Porter, and, as of this afternoon, temporary advocate for Richard Porter, pending the emergency hearing." She held up a document. "The court has granted a temporary restraining order preventing Patricia Porter from making medical or financial decisions for Richard Porter until a full hearing can be conducted." Patricia's face went white, then red. "That's absurd. Richard, tell them you want me to make your decisions." Dad looked at her. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then softly, "I want Claire." It was barely a whisper, but everyone heard it. Patricia's mask cracked. "You don't mean that. She's manipulating you. She's turned you against me. Mrs. Porter, you need to leave." Dr. Ramos moved between Patricia and the bed. "Now, Richard," Patricia's voice rose, desperate. "Don't do this. Don't let her do this to us. I love you. I've taken care of you. You stole from him." I couldn't stay quiet anymore. "You isolated him, neglected him, starved him. That's not love. How dare you, Mrs. Porter?" Margaret's voice cut through the room like ice. "You're in violation of a court order. If you don't leave immediately, I'll have security remove you and file for contempt." Patricia's lawyer touched her arm. "Patricia, we should go. We'll address this at the hearing." For a moment, I thought she might refuse. Her eyes were wild, bouncing between Dad, me, Margaret, the lawyer. She looked like a cornered animal. Then she smoothed her cardigan, lifted her chin, and walked out without another word. The room felt 10 degrees warmer after she left. Dad was shaking. I sat on the bed beside him and put my arm around his shoulders. "You did good, Dad. She's going to fight this." His voice was trembling. "She's going to say terrible things about me, about you. Let her. The truth is on our side." Margaret came over, her expression gentler now. "Mr. Porter, I know this is overwhelming, but you made the right choice. And we're going to do everything we can to protect you." He nodded, but he still looked scared. Over the next 2 days, Margaret worked around the clock. She subpoenaed bank records, interviewed Dorothy Alvarez, gathered medical reports, and built a case that Patricia had systematically exploited my father. What she found was worse than I'd imagined. In the 18 months since the wedding, Patricia had withdrawn over $400,000 from the joint account, the account where my monthly deposits went. She'd used it to pay off her own debts, buy the BMW, take trips to Vegas and Miami. She'd put almost nothing toward household expenses or Dad's care. Meanwhile, Dad's pension had been automatically deposited into a separate account that Patricia also controlled. She'd been taking just enough from that to keep the utilities on and buy minimal groceries. Everything else she'd diverted to herself. She was bleeding him dry, Margaret told me. Another year, and there would have been nothing left. The emergency hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Dad was discharged from the hospital the day before, and I took him home, to my apartment, not his house. He sat on my couch, looking small and lost, surrounded by my things. "I don't have any clothes," he said. "Everything's at the house. I'll get you clothes, whatever you need. She's probably changed the locks. Then I'll get a court order, or we'll just buy new things. It doesn't matter." He looked at me. "I'm sorry you have to do all this." "Dad, stop. I want to do this." I sat beside him. I should have been doing it all along. I should have visited more, paid more attention. I'm the one who's sorry. You were respecting my choices. You were manipulated into those choices. He was quiet for a moment. Then, when your mother died, I thought my life was over. I thought the best parts were behind me and all that was left was waiting. His voice cracked. Patricia made me feel alive again. At first, she paid attention to me, made me feel wanted, and I was so desperate for that feeling that I ignored all the signs. What signs? The way she talked about her ex-husband. Everything was his fault. He was terrible. He'd stolen from her. The way she had no friends, no one from her past. The way she rushed the wedding, didn't want you involved in the planning. He shook his head. I told myself it was because she loved me so much she couldn't wait. But really, she just wanted to lock it down before anyone could warn me. Her daughter didn't come to the wedding. Her daughter has a restraining order against her, Dad said quietly. I found the paperwork in her desk 6 months ago. Patricia told her daughter that if she didn't give her money, she'd never see her grandchildren. The daughter chose the restraining order. My blood ran cold. Dad, why didn't you tell me? Because I was ashamed. Because it meant I'd married someone who'd already done to someone else exactly what she was doing to me. And I couldn't face it. He looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. I couldn't face that I'd been that stupid. You weren't stupid. You were grieving and lonely, and she's a predator. That's not your fault, isn't it? I'm the one who signed the papers. I'm the one who pushed you away. She pushed me away. She lied to you about me. And I believed her. His voice broke. That's the part I can't forgive. I believed her over you. I hugged him then, this frail, broken man who was my father, who'd raised me and loved me and supported me my whole life, who'd made one mistake in a moment of vulnerability, and it had cost him nearly everything. We're going to fix this, I whispered. I promise. The hearing was held in a small courtroom with wood paneling and fluorescent lights. Patricia sat on one side with her lawyer. Dad and I sat on the other with Margaret. The judge was a woman in her 60s, with silver hair and a no-nonsense expression. She reviewed the filings, then looked up. This is an emergency petition for temporary conservatorship and financial protection. Mrs. Patricia Porter, you're here to contest? Patricia's lawyer stood. Yes, Your Honor. This is a gross overreach by Ms. Claire Porter, who is attempting to interfere in her father's marriage and override his clearly stated wishes. Clearly stated wishes to be neglected and stolen from? Margaret countered. The judge held up a hand. I'll hear from the petitioner first. Ms. Chen? Margaret presented the case methodically. The medical record showing malnutrition and neglect. The bank statements showing the financial exploitation. Dorothy Alvarez's written statement about Patricia's extended absences. Dr. Morris's psychological evaluation. The timeline of my attempts to contact Dad and Patricia's blocking of access. Patricia's lawyer tried to counter, arguing that Dad had made his own choices, that the money was a gift to the marital estate, that Patricia had every right to manage their finances as she saw fit. Then the judge asked to hear from Dad. He stood slowly, leaning on the table. Margaret had warned him this might happen, but he still looked terrified. "Mr. Porter," the judge said gently, "I want to understand your perspective. Do you believe your wife has been acting in your best interests?" Dad swallowed hard. "No, Your Honor." "Can you explain?" He took a breath. "I gave Patricia power of attorney because she said it would make things easier, that she'd handle the bills and the finances so I could rest. I trusted her." His voice shook. "But she didn't use the money for us. She used it for herself. And when I tried to ask questions, she'd get angry. Tell me I was ungrateful. Tell me no one else would put up with me. Did she prevent you from seeing your daughter? She told me Claire had abandoned me, that she only sent money out of guilt. I believed her for a long time." He glanced at me. "But it wasn't true. Claire never abandoned me. I let Patricia convince me I was alone. And now? Now I want my daughter to help me. I don't trust Patricia anymore. I don't feel safe with her." The judge made notes. Then she looked at Patricia. "Mrs. Porter, do you have anything to say?" Patricia stood, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "Your Honor, I love my husband. I've devoted myself to him. This is a witch hunt, orchestrated by a daughter who never accepted our marriage. Richard is elderly and confused. He's being manipulated. The medical records don't indicate confusion," the judge interrupted. "They indicate neglect. He was ill. I took him to the doctor. After he collapsed from malnutrition, after Adult Protective Services had already investigated." The judge's tone was sharp. "And the financial records show significant withdrawals for personal expenses unrelated to Mr. Porter's care." Patricia's lawyer jumped in. "The money was sent as a gift to the marriage. The money was sent by a daughter to support her father, with the expectation it would be used for his care. Instead, it appears to have been systematically diverted." The judge closed the file. "I've heard enough." My heart was pounding. "I'm granting the emergency petition," the judge said. "Effective immediately, Patricia Porter's power of attorney is suspended. Claire Porter is appointed temporary conservator for the limited purpose of managing Richard Porter's financial and medical affairs, pending a full hearing in 30 days. Patricia gasped. "You can't." "Additionally, all joint accounts are frozen. Patricia Porter is enjoined from withdrawing funds, selling assets, or making any financial decisions on Mr. Porter's behalf." The judge looked at Patricia. "You are also ordered to stay at least 100 yards away from Mr. Porter unless he specifically requests contact." "This is insane." Patricia was on her feet. "Richard, tell her you want me." Dad looked at her. And for the first time since I'd arrived at that dark house weeks ago, I saw something in his expression that wasn't fear or defeat. It was resolve. "I want you to leave me alone," he said quietly. "And I want you to give back what you stole." Patricia's face twisted into something ugly. "You'll regret this. Both of you." "Mrs. Porter," the judge said coldly, "any violation of this order will result in contempt charges and possible criminal prosecution. Do you understand?" Patricia didn't answer. She just grabbed her purse and stormed out, her lawyer hurrying after her. The judge looked at me. "Ms. Porter, you have 30 days to demonstrate that this arrangement is in your father's best interests. Don't waste them." "I won't, Your Honor. Thank you." Outside the courthouse, Dad stood on the steps in the sunlight, blinking like he'd just woken up from a long, dark dream. "Is it really over?" he asked. "Not yet. There's still the full hearing in 30 days. But we won, Dad. For now, we won." He started to cry. Big, silent tears that rolled down his cheeks. I held him, right there on the courthouse steps, and let him cry. The 30 days between the emergency order and the full hearing were some of the strangest of my life. Dad moved into my spare bedroom, which I hurriedly converted from an office into something livable. We fell into a routine. I'd work from home in the mornings while he slept in. Then we'd have lunch together, and in the afternoons, I'd take him to doctor's appointments or physical therapy. He was gaining weight, slowly. The hollows in his cheeks were filling in. His eyes looked clearer. But the emotional recovery was slower. He had nightmares. I'd wake up to hear him crying out in the night, tangled in sheets, reliving some argument or confrontation with Patricia. I'd sit with him until he calmed down, bringing him water, reminding him where he was, that he was safe. "I'm sorry," he'd say every time. "I'm a burden." "You're not a burden. You're my father." Margaret was busy building the case for the full hearing. She'd hired a forensic accountant to trace exactly where all the money had gone. The results were damning. Over $400,000 withdrawn in 18 months, spent on Patricia's personal expenses. Spa treatments, designer clothes, gambling, 2 trips to the Bahamas that Dad hadn't been on. She didn't even try to hide it, Margaret told me. She genuinely believed she was entitled to it. We also learned more about Patricia's past. Margaret hired a private investigator who found Patricia's ex-husband and her daughter. Both agreed to provide statements. The ex-husband described a pattern of financial abuse similar to what she'd done to Dad, isolating him from friends, controlling all the money, running up debt in his name. He'd finally divorced her when he discovered she'd taken out credit cards using his social security number. The daughter's statement was even worse. Patricia had demanded money repeatedly, claiming emergencies that didn't exist. When the daughter refused, Patricia had threatened to keep her away from her own children. The daughter had chosen to cut off all contact rather than continue being extorted. "She's done this before," I said when Margaret showed me the statements. "This is what she does." "Yes. And that's going to help our case significantly. It establishes a pattern of predatory behavior." But Patricia wasn't going quietly. 2 weeks before the hearing, she filed a counterclaim. She argued that Dad had been mentally competent when he married her and gave her power of attorney, that the money I'd sent was a gift to the marriage with no strings attached, and that I was manipulating Dad in his weakened state to punish her for replacing my mother. Her lawyer also demanded that Dad undergo another psychological evaluation by a doctor of their choosing. Margaret fought it, but the judge allowed it in the interest of fairness. The evaluating psychologist was a stern man named Dr. Petrov, who came to my apartment to interview Dad. I wasn't allowed to be present. Dad went into the meeting anxious and came out 2 hours later looking drained. "How did it go?" I asked. "I don't know." He asked a lot of questions about my marriage, about you, about whether I felt pressured. "What did you say?" I told the truth. That Patricia isolated me and took advantage of me. That you're helping me, not controlling me. He sighed. But he kept asking the same questions different ways, like he was trying to catch me in a lie. "They're going to claim you're being coached." "I know." A week later, Dr. Petrov's report came back. Margaret called me as soon as she read it. "It's not great," she said carefully. "He concluded that your father shows signs of depression and dependency, and that he may be unduly influenced by you as his primary caregiver." My stomach dropped. "So he's saying I'm manipulating Dad?" "He's saying it's a possibility that the court should consider. But he also acknowledged that your father is cognitively intact and capable of making his own decisions. It's not a disaster, but it gives Patricia's side ammunition." What do? We stick to the facts. The medical evidence of neglect, the financial records, the statements from witnesses. Patricia can try to make this about you, but the evidence speaks for itself. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the living room in the dark, listening to Dad snore softly in the next room. I thought about the past 6 weeks, how close I'd come to losing him, how, if I'd waited even a little longer, if I hadn't stopped by that day, he might have died in that dark house, alone and forgotten. And I thought about the hearing tomorrow, about having to sit across from Patricia again, listening to her lies, watching her perform innocence and victimhood. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "He'll never forgive you for this. Even if you win, you'll lose him. Patricia." I blocked the number and tried not to let the words burrow into my brain. But they did anyway. The full hearing was held in the same courtroom, but this time it was more formal. There were more people. A court reporter, a social worker assigned to observe, Patricia's daughter attending via video call. Patricia looked different. She toned down the polished appearance. Less makeup. A simple dress. Her hair pulled back. She looked older, more vulnerable. It was calculated, and it made my skin crawl. The judge reviewed both sides' filings, then began hearing testimony. Margaret called Dr. Ramos first, who testified to Dad's physical condition when he was admitted: the severe malnutrition, the weight loss, the overall neglect. Patricia's lawyer tried to suggest it could have been caused by an illness, but Dr. Ramos shut that down. There was no underlying medical condition. This was caused by inadequate nutrition over an extended period. Next was Dorothy Alvarez. She was nervous, but she held her ground, describing the times she'd seen the house dark for days, Patricia's car gone, no sign of my father. I didn't want to intrude, Dorothy said, but I knew something was wrong. Patricia's lawyer tried to discredit her. Isn't it true you only looked out your window occasionally? You can't possibly know what was happening inside the house. I know what I saw, and I know that poor man was being left alone. Then Margaret called the forensic accountant, who walked through the financial records in excruciating detail. $437,000, withdrawn over 18 months. The breakdown of where it went: travel, shopping, cash withdrawals at casinos. Was any significant portion of these funds used for Mr. Richard Porter's care or household expenses? Margaret asked. No. Based on my analysis, less than 5% went toward anything that could be considered joint expenses. Patricia's lawyer objected repeatedly, arguing that married couples don't have to justify how they spend money. But the judge overruled him. This isn't about marital spending habits. It's about whether Mrs. Patricia Porter used her power of attorney to exploit Mr. Porter financially. Continue. Finally, Margaret called Dad to testify. He walked slowly to the witness stand, and I could see his hands shaking as he was sworn in. Margaret was gentle with him, asking him to describe his relationship with Patricia, how the power of attorney came about, what his daily life had been like. Dad spoke quietly but clearly. She told me I didn't need to worry about anything, that she'd handle it all. And at first, it felt like a relief. But then she started being gone more. And when she was home, she was cold, annoyed with me, like I was a burden. Did she provide adequate food and care? No, there were days I had nothing to eat. I was too weak to go to the store myself, and she wouldn't go. Did you know she was withdrawing large sums from your account? I knew she was spending money, but when I asked about it, she'd get angry, tell me it was none of my business, that I'd given her control and I needed to trust her. Patricia's lawyer cross-examined him, trying to paint him as confused or influenced by me. Isn't it true that your daughter has been pressuring you to turn against your wife? No, Claire is helping me. There's a difference. You're living with her now, dependent on her. Doesn't that create a conflict of interest? I'm living with her because I don't feel safe with Patricia. That was my choice. A choice you made while hospitalized and vulnerable. A choice I made when I finally had the strength to make it. The lawyer tried to push, but Dad didn't budge. I'd never been more proud of him. Then it was Patricia's turn to testify. She took the stand looking sad and dignified. Her lawyer led her through a narrative where she was the devoted wife, blindsided by her ungrateful stepdaughter's interference. I love Richard, she said, her voice trembling. I've given up everything to care for him, and this is how I'm repaid. Can you explain the financial withdrawals? We're married. It's our money. I managed our household, planned for our future. I don't think I should have to justify every dollar to someone who wasn't there. What about the trips? The personal expenses? Richard encouraged me to enjoy myself. He said I deserved it for taking care of him. It was a lie. I could see it in her eyes, in the slight smile at the corner of her mouth. She thought she was winning. Then Margaret stood for cross-examination. Mrs. Porter, you stated that Richard encouraged you to take trips and spend money on yourself. Yet he testified he often had no food in the house. How do you reconcile that? He's exaggerating. There was always food. Dr. Ramos testified he was severely malnourished. He has a small appetite. That's not my fault. You also testified you gave up everything to care for him. What exactly did you give up? Patricia faltered. My independence. My time. You were divorced and in debt when you met Richard, correct? That's irrelevant, is it? You saw a lonely widower with financial resources, and you targeted him. Just like you targeted your ex-husband. Just like you tried to extort your own daughter. Objection. Patricia's lawyer shot to his feet. Counsel is editorializing. Sustained, the judge said. Rephrase, Ms. Chen. Margaret didn't miss a beat. Mrs. Porter, your daughter has a restraining order against you, does she not? Patricia's face went red. That's a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding that resulted in a legal order barring you from contact? She was manipulated by her father, the same father you claim financially. Abused you? Patricia's mouth opened and closed. She had no answer. Margaret introduced the statements from the ex-husband and daughter. Patricia's lawyer objected, but the judge allowed them as evidence of a pattern of behavior. By the time Patricia stepped down, she looked rattled. The judge called a recess. We waited in the hallway, Dad sitting on a bench, looking exhausted. How do you think it went? He asked. I think Margaret destroyed her, I said honestly. When we reconvened, the judge didn't make us wait. I've reviewed all the evidence and testimony, she said, and I'm prepared to rule. My heart hammered. The evidence clearly shows that Patricia Porter used her position of trust to financially exploit Richard Porter. The withdrawals were excessive, self-serving, and bore no relation to his care or well-being. Additionally, the medical evidence supports a finding of neglect. Patricia started to speak, but her lawyer put a hand on her arm. Therefore, I am making the temporary conservatorship permanent. Claire Porter will continue as conservator for her father's financial and medical affairs. Patricia Porter's power of attorney is permanently revoked. Relief flooded through me. Furthermore, the judge continued, I am ordering Patricia Porter to repay the sum of $437,000, representing the funds improperly withdrawn from the joint account. She has 90 days to make restitution. Patricia went pale. I don't have that money. Then you'll need to make arrangements to return it. If you fail to comply, Mr. Porter's conservator is authorized to pursue civil and criminal remedies. The judge looked at her coldly. You exploited a vulnerable elderly man for your own gain, Mrs. Porter. You're fortunate I'm not referring this to the district attorney for prosecution. This is outrageous. The restraining order remains in effect. You are to have no contact with Richard Porter. This hearing is concluded. The gavel came down, and it was over. Patricia stormed out without looking at us. Her lawyer followed, already on his phone. Dad sat very still beside me. Then quietly, he started to cry. Not sad tears. Relief. Release. It's over, he whispered. It's really over. I put my arm around him. It's over. We sat there until the courtroom cleared, just holding on to each other. Outside, Margaret was waiting. Congratulations, she said. You fought hard for this. We all did. Thank you. She smiled. Now comes the hard part, actually getting the money back. She's probably hidden assets, and collection could take years. But at least you have a judgment. I don't even care about the money, I said. I just wanted him safe. Well, he is now. You did good, Claire. As we walked to the car, Dad was quiet. I thought he might be processing everything, exhausted from the emotion of it all. But when we got to the car, he turned to me. I need to do something, he said. What? I need to go back to the house. Get some things? My things from your mother. Dad, we can do that another time. You don't have to. I need to do it now, before I lose my nerve. I looked at him, at the determination in his eyes. Okay, we'll go together. The house looked the same from the outside. Same neat lawn, same flower beds, same white shutters. But it felt different now, smaller, less powerful. I used the key I'd never given back. The door swung open, and we stepped inside. The air smelled stale again, like Patricia had already stopped caring for the place. The living room was a mess, papers scattered on the coffee table, dishes in the sink visible from the entryway. She'd left in a hurry, it seemed. Or just stopped pretending. Dad stood in the doorway, looking around like he was seeing it for the first time. "It's strange," he said. "I lived here for 40 years, raised you here, and now it feels like someone else's house. We don't have to stay long. Just get what you came for." He nodded and walked toward the bedroom, the one he'd shared with my mother for 50 years, and then with Patricia for 18 months. I waited in the living room, not wanting to intrude. I could hear him opening drawers, moving things around. While I waited, I looked at the mail on the coffee table. Bills, mostly. Credit card statements in Patricia's name. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. She'd racked up another $30,000 in debt since the court order. Trying to squeeze out every last dollar before the judgment came down, probably. She was never going to pay the money back. Margaret was right. It would take years of legal battles, and even then, we'd probably recover pennies on the dollar. But that was okay, because this was never really about the money. Dad emerged from the bedroom carrying a small cardboard box. Inside were photo albums, my mother's jewelry box, a quilt she'd made. "That's all?" I asked gently. "That's all I need. The rest is just stuff." We walked through the house one more time. Dad paused in the kitchen, looking at the table where we'd had family dinners when I was a kid, where Mom had served birthday cakes and holiday meals. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "For what?" "For letting someone else live here, for trying to replace your mother. And Dad, you didn't try to replace her. You tried to stop being lonely. There's a difference. I should have been stronger. You were grieving. Patricia took advantage of that. None of this is your fault." He nodded, but I wasn't sure he believed me yet. As we left, I locked the door behind us. "What do you want to do with the house?" "Sell it. I don't ever want to come back here." "Okay, we'll sell it." Over the next 3 months, we did exactly that. I hired a realtor, and we sold the house. The money went into a trust for Dad's care. Somewhere Patricia couldn't touch it even if she tried. Patricia herself vanished. The restraining order meant she couldn't contact us. But I heard through Margaret that she'd moved to another state, probably already looking for her next target. The $437,000 judgment sat uncollected. We'd filed liens against her, but she had no assets to seize. Margaret said we could keep pursuing it, but it felt like throwing good money after bad. "Let it go," Dad said when we discussed it. "I just want to move on." So we did. Dad stayed with me for 6 months while he regained his strength, physical and emotional. We fell into a comfortable rhythm. He started cooking again, which he hadn't done in years. He taught me how to make Mom's recipes, the ones I'd never bothered to learn. We'd cook together in the evenings, and he'd tell me stories about her, about their life together. He started seeing Dr. Morris regularly for therapy, working through the trauma of what Patricia had done. Slowly, the nightmares became less frequent. The haunted look in his eyes began to fade. And then one day, he told me he was ready. "Ready for what?" I asked. "To live on my own again. Not far, but my own place." I'd be lying if I said it didn't hurt a little. I'd gotten used to having him around, but I also understood. He needed to prove to himself that he could be independent again, that he wasn't just trading one dependence for another. We found him a small apartment in a senior community about 10 minutes from me. It had a community center, activities, other people his age. He could be social again without being isolated. The day he moved in, I helped him unpack. We put Mom's quilt on his bed, her photos on the bookshelf. "This feels right," he said, looking around the little space. "Like a new start." "It is. I'm proud of myself," he said suddenly, looking at me, "for getting out, for choosing this." "I'm proud of you too, Dad." And he smiled. A real smile, the kind I hadn't seen in years. Over the following months, I watched him transform. He joined a woodworking class at the community center and started building things again. Something he'd loved when I was a kid, but had abandoned after Mom died. He made friends, went to movie nights, even started dating a woman named Susan who played bridge. "Just friends," he insisted when I teased him. but I saw the way his eyes lit up when he talked about her. One Saturday, about a year after the final court hearing, Dad called and asked me to bring my son, his grandson Jake, over to his apartment. When we arrived, Dad was in his little workshop space off the living room, putting finishing touches on something. "Close your eyes, Jake," he said. Jake, who was 6 and delighted by his grandfather's newfound energy, squeezed his eyes shut. Dad carried out a beautiful wooden toy chest, carved and sanded smooth. On the front, he'd carved, "For Jake, love Grandpa." Jake's eyes went huge. "You made this?" "I did, for your birthday." "It's not my birthday for 2 more months." "I know, but I wanted to finish it early. And I wanted to show you something." Dad knelt down, running his hand over the carved letters. "See this? I made this with my own hands. And someday, when you're older, I'll teach you how to build things too." Jake hugged him, and Dad closed his eyes, holding onto his grandson. I took a photo of them like that, the toy chest between them, both of them smiling. Later, after Jake was playing with toys from the chest, Dad and I sat on his little balcony drinking coffee. "I was thinking," Dad said, "about the money, the $437,000. Dad, we've been over this. It's gone. We're not getting it back." "I know, but I realized something. That money, the money you sent, the money Patricia stole, it wasn't really about the dollars. It was about what it represented." "What do you mean?" "You sent it because you loved me, because you wanted to take care of me even from far away. And Patricia stole it because she didn't love me. She loved what she could take from me." He looked at me. "But the love you gave me? She couldn't steal that. Even when I believed her lies, even when I pushed you away, that love was still there. And it's what saved me." My eyes burned with tears. "So the money doesn't matter," Dad continued. "I got something worth more. I got you back. I got myself back. I got a second chance at life." He gestured toward the apartment, toward the toy chest visible through the sliding door. "I got this. And that's worth more than any amount Patricia could have stolen." I reached over and took his hand. "I love you, Dad. I love you too, sweetheart. And I'm sorry it took me so long to remember that." We sat there in the afternoon sun, just being together. Father and daughter, survivors. Inside, Jake was building a tower out of blocks, his voice carrying through the screen. "Grandpa, come see what I made." Dad smiled and stood. "Duty calls." I watched him go inside, moving with more energy than he'd had in years, laughing with his grandson, building something new. The trauma of what Patricia had done would always be part of our story, but it didn't define us anymore. We'd survived. We'd fought back. And we'd found our way to something better. Not perfect, not without scars, but whole, and that was enough. I stopped sending money after that first day, but I started showing up instead. Weekly dinners, holidays together, random Tuesday phone calls just to talk. Because I'd learned something through all of this. Presence matters more than presence. Love matters more than money. And sometimes, the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing. Patricia took $437,000 from my father, but I got him back. And in the end, that was priceless.